Well, all right, all right, all right. Welcome, everybody. Another episode of Legend Sports and Amplify. We're here once or twice a week talking baseball and baseball history, Negro League baseball, black baseball history, Latin baseball, minor leagues, all those passions and pursuits that go along with that. And this afternoon, I am really happy to have on, especially since it is the first day of minor league baseball this year, the voice of the Kansas City Monarchs. He's also the voice of baseball in Australia. Dan Vaughn, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, great. Just excited about baseball. It's 80 degrees here in Texas, and it feels like it. It finally feels like it's that time of year, right?
Right. I know I was the same way. I was out and about this morning. You said you were just out there. It went from like, what's weather this year? It was just 40 some degrees last week, and now it's summertime. It's ready for baseball, right?
And I think too, and as I was thinking this morning doing my walk, the Final Four was yesterday. It's behind us, so we're now looking. The next season starts. Masters starts this weekend. Baseball starts this weekend. We're in the next season, so we're ready to go.
Ready to go. And everybody that was kind of stressing a little bit about Major League Baseball, I kept telling everybody, just like a famous sports figure said, just relax. It'll be okay. I mean, we've been through this before. I guess that's kind of what happens when you're on social media, right? Things get a little worked up to a frenzy sometimes, but yeah, here we are. We're ready. It's only 2 more days till Major League Baseball, which is pretty darn good considering where we were just a few weeks ago with that, right?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, 6 weeks ago, didn't look good. I mean, it really didn't look. It was a day-to-day proposition, and all of a sudden they figured it out. Thankfully, but you're right though. When the last time in '94, we didn't have the social media we had now. And you make a really good point of. We were getting social media updates literally by the half hour of the negotiations. Where back in '94, you got your update on Sports Center, and then it was the newspaper the next day. And it felt like this one was a little more intense.
Yeah, it really did, right? And that's what you just said is exactly right. What I was talking about. There were literally times during that whole process where. Up to the second, someone must have been standing outside the meeting room or something and get everybody's hopes up. And then an hour later, it didn't happen.
Waiting for the smoke to come out of the chimney, so to speak.
Exactly, right? That's what I was thinking, the same thing, like electing the Pope, right? So I love to talk about all the subjects that I mentioned to you, but minor league baseball is kind of near and dear to me because I kind of got my start in right out of college working for a minor league baseball team up in Northeast PA, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Red Barons, and so I spent several years with them. I couldn't wait to get to the ballpark every day. So here you are doing your thing, but I also love to. So we're going to talk about that, but I love to hear. How do you get to where you are in your journey? Because you have been around the world doing this.
Yeah, I started with Texas Tech undergrad in broadcast journalism, Recom Tech, and I went to college wanting to do. I think all of us as a high schooler, junior high, or even elementary school kid, we had these aspirations of we're going to be athletes. We're going to be that. I was going to be Roger Staubach, or I was going to be, Tony Dorsett. That was the guy I was going to be. I was going to be Jim Sundberg or Nolan Ryan. Those are guys that I was going to be. I was going to be, the Iceman, things like that. George Gervin and my teams I followed. But you finally realize at some point that, maybe I might want to have a backup plan. And in college, my backup plan was broadcasting and media. I did some acting in high school, some church musicals growing up as well, the senior play in high school. So, and my father was a community theater actor and a salesman. So I had a little of that background too. And my thinking was through college, political science sounded cool, broadcast law sounded cool, but really all the media classes I took, that was what I wanted to do. And actually, my senior year of high school, I would drive from Dallas, Fort Worth, my home in Lake Highlands, Northeast Dallas, to Sulphur Springs, Texas. That's about 90 miles up the interstate toward Texarkana. And I would do a Saturday DJ shift at a small FM station there in Sulphur Springs called Dixie 96. And I would do my DJ shift. It was like a noon to 5, and I'd play the records and the 80s hits, and then a little color radar. It was very new then, and I really got the bug. I mean, this is kind of cool. I mean, radio was the thing, and I remember listening to the radio as a little kid too, old 820 on WBAP, then on my old Zenith radio. And so my early thoughts were, I want to stay in something I really enjoy because I really believed, wasn't about the money, it was about what I really want to do. So fast forward into college, I read an article about the baseball winter meetings. And then back in the early 90s, and really still to this day, it's a really great way for young people to get involved in professional baseball. To go, and you know this from your time in Scranton, it's the real clearinghouse for baseball. Mm-hmm. So I went to winter meetings in Louisville in 1992 and got a job in Charleston, West Virginia at that winter meetings, broadcasting baseball.
Cool.
And by the way, as you know this, you're going to sell too, which I had no idea. I thought broadcasters just showed up and flipped the microphone on and you did your thing. But I'd learned how to sell baseball and do outfield signs and fix seats and stock concessions because it was a mom and pop, quote unquote, South Atlantic League team, the Charleston Wheelers. And you had to really do it all. So that was where I got my start. And from there, I just kind of, would piggyback to the next opening and really bounced from there to Jacksonville, Florida for a couple of years, came home to Texas, into the Texas League and the Southern League games of the week for a couple of years, and back to the Midwest League in Burlington, Iowa. And then I took a break for about 10 years and worked in local radio in Dallas, and I missed it every day. I mean, I knew that first opening day in 2001 that I made a mistake, but it took me 9 years to get back in, basically, and got back in. And I'm trying to make it as fast as possible. It's a long answer, but I went to Australia, sight unseen. I'd sent my demo tape to the Perth Heat.
Wow.
Sent that to them as a PA, and they hired me as a PA guy, sight unseen. And I'd only been to Australia once on a holiday. And so I went to Perth, which was, if you know much about Australia, it's the middle of nowhere. And sight unseen to Perth, went out there and did the PA and turned that into broadcasting over there. And
awesome.
Just from there to Gary, and then from Gary South Shore to Kansas City. So it's been a real blessed journey. But that's the hour-long story in about 5 minutes. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, that is just the kind of thing that, a lot of what this. When I started doing these, I mentioned to you about a year ago, was to try to give some context and backstory to black baseball history in the Negro Leagues, because it was right after the announcements for Major League Baseball recognizing finally the Negro Leagues and everything else. It was right around that time when the Monarchs rebranded as well, the Reign Reborn, which is very cool. We'll talk about that too. Yeah. But, part of all this, I've been also trying to give these stories of all these people. Some of them are artists, actors, musicians, whether they're into statistics or like you're into, the broadcasting side, to maybe get the next generation people, maybe other people who are, maybe not even the next generation, just other people who find these kind of interests like you do and others. And, you can do this. But you got to kind of put your mind to it and find the way. And that's really the biggest reason why I'm kind of doing these stories, is to let people hear other people's journeys so that they can also see a path, maybe, which is kind of fun.
It is a journey, no doubt. It's a journey. And there's so many twists and turns along the way. I mean, I'm not where I'm at today with a lot of twists and turns. And also I'm very blessed, and I've got a heavenly Father watching over me. That's helped too, and been a huge help. So I have a great family behind me. But the twists and turns, I mean, it could be a movie no one would watch my story, but it can go a movie length. So
sight unseen, you sent your demo tape to Australia.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so, okay, so now you're in Australia. Now you've got to get acclimated, find yourself your way around. What was that all like?
Well, I'd been over there on a birthday trip a couple of years, 5 years prior. So I love the country. I knew I'd love the country, but I'd only seen Australia is much larger than the United States, but most of it's very densely populated. So I'd seen Sydney, Surfers Paradise, and Brisbane, that area. That's all I'd really seen. I didn't know anything about Perth. I knew it was 2,000 miles from Sydney. I pull up to the ballpark the first day, and the groundskeeper's chasing a brown snake in the parking lot. And a brown snake is the equivalent to a rattlesnake in the States. It's a poisonous snake that no one wants to be part of in Australia. Of course, the joke about everything in Australia kills you, which is not really true. But that was my first thing, is to see the groundskeeper chasing a brown snake. And I knew a brown snake bad, rattlesnake bad. That was my first indoctrination. But, the thing is, I didn't know if I'd be there a series, a week, three. I just didn't know because I didn't know them. They didn't know me. They liked my stuff. Originally, I thought I might go to grad school in Melbourne, which was another 2,000 miles of the direction, and maybe work part time at their ballpark. But this kind of came out of the blue, and I really still thankful this day for Alex Pellerano, who made that call, and Jeff Hooker, I've become dear friends with at the time, was the chairman of the Perth Heat. But I didn't know. I didn't know if I'd be there. And I remember that first weekend I arrived on a Tuesday. We had a game, exhibition games that weekend. I'm not really a PA guy. I'm a play-by-play guy, but I thought I'd done enough of the PA, enough of it that I had sort of an idea. I mean, I knew a good PA guy when I heard one, and so I could sort of kind of winged it a little bit, and the demo tape kind of showed that, and I think it showed the talent, and I hit it off, and I knew about the second inning when the chairman and the GM and everybody keeps coming up to the broadcast, our little booth, and it was a little tip close to the field. They were like, thumbs up, thumbs up. They were all fired up. So I knew I was going to be a while then. And the lucky thing for me is that I met my dear broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, who is from Australia. And Paul and I do Talking Baseball Australia together. And Paul was doing the grounds announcing. He was the guy, the MC. I was a PA guy. And here's this Australian guy, an American guy from Texas. We kind of hit it off as a comedy we just naturally had a fit. We just kind of realized we worked really good together. And by the middle of that season, he and I wound up being in the broadcast booth together because that combination was so good that they were like, we got to put these guys on the air together. And that's, you just never know how those things are going to work out. Because really, I'm not saying I had low expectations. I didn't have any expectations. Mm-hmm. I just thought I just was going to do my best and hopefully, represent myself well. But I didn't have any idea that I'd be going back year after year, and
that is so cool.
Crazy, yeah, crazy things to have those jump off the cliff sometimes.
Yeah,
is a free fall, but it can be a great fall.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's a great point. You just brought back so many. I mean, just even leading up to this, all the things I was thinking back through of the years I was with the Red Barons, and because I was in the PA booth with the music. We had a live organist for the first couple of years with the music guy. I did during the games. I did marketing work, but then during the games, I ran the scoreboard and the message board in the outfield, putting up the statistics and pictures. And this is back in the days when it was light bulbs, a bunch of light bulbs, making a graphic kind of thing. And we also had the PA announcer, but right next door was the radio booth. But you're talking about how you have to wear a lot of hats. Boy, oh boy, I used to love talking to those guys, and you guys are so you're in the moment, but as things are going on, because it's live action, things don't always happen the way you expect, but you just, without a beat, you keep right on going. Andy Brown mentioned that about a PA announcer and a radio guy down in Dominican. He's an artist who was just down in the Dominican Republic, talking about how this one fella does the entire broadcast on his feet and is very animated, and things are happening, and without missing a beat, he's just going through and telling the game, and it's a work of art. It really is.
Well, I'll tell you where it really helped me. That 10 years off that I was in radio, I worked for CBS Radio in Dallas, and then I was working for a company that owned a bunch of nightclubs, country clubs, dance clubs, whatever. And that ability to sort of be on your feet and be able to, here comes a home run, here comes a double play, whatever, and not know what's coming, helped me as a DJ and an MC. I would MC these large concerts, and I'd be putting these country acts on stage or whatever, and your crowd is looking right at you. And they're right there on the stage, but I was able to really work amongst the crowd because of my baseball play-by-play background. And I would have thought that I would have been fish out of water, but I was able to take to that because you never know what's going to happen. That's what makes the broadcast booth so exciting.
So much fun.
You really never know what's in just the press box. I mean, you're talking about working the school board. I mean, there's all kinds of stories over the course of a season that those folks go through, and camaraderie that you develop, and things that happen, and you look back on it and laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So over the years, I mean, so many great broadcasters. The Vince Scully's, Red Barber. Harry Carey. Do you have a favorite? Is there anybody that you have a style
I love the late Mark Holtz, who did the Ranger games when I was growing up. As a kid, John Miller too. When I was growing up as a youngster, he was doing the Ranger games as well, early years. But Mark Holtz did the Ranger games. He passed, I believe, in '99, 2000. but did the first. I remember doing the first playoff game they ever did in '96, and I really I didn't know him personally, but I looked up to him and his work. I remember, just that whole, just his style. I remember listening to him in college. He was the guy that I really fancy myself a lot. And I'm a real big fan. Again, this is a Metroplex guy, but Brad Sham, who is the voice of the Dallas Cowboys, a guy that I used to listen to growing up. So mostly Metroplex type guys. I as a Southerner, but having worked around the country and the globe, I think that baseball does lend itself to some of the folksier types, and I think that maybe being a little folksier, or you want to call it country or whatever you want to call it, more that style lends to me. I mean, maybe it's a Texas thing. I had something. Michael Dixon is a dear friend of mine who broadcast the Lincoln Salt Dogs as a Dallas kid, and we talk about that all the time. That sometimes these Texas folks just have a way of telling the story. I don't know what it is about us, but maybe we do. It's just that way. But I would say more for sure, Mark Holtz and Brad Sham.
Awesome. So the Monarchs, were you there? So your first season was the first season as the Monarchs, or were you there with the T-Bones as well?
I was there with the T-Bones. I got brought into Kansas City in 2017 from Gary South Shore, and then 17-18, the team was 17-18-19 as the T-Bones was sold in the offseason of 19. We didn't play in 20, and then rebranded after the 20 season for the 21 season. So there was 1 year I'm still with the club, and we didn't play.
Okay. So there has been a lot of, I don't want to say upheaval, but there's been a lot of changes with minor league baseball in the last couple of years, with Major League Baseball, with affiliations and everything else. And like I said, I had on Matt McDermott of Independent Baseball a few weeks back to talk about some of those things. But so the Monarchs are part of the American Association of Professional Baseball Teams, right?
Right. Yes.
So that is now does have a Major League Baseball affiliation, not an affiliation agreement, but some sort of working agreement, right?
Partner. We call it partner league. You have your affiliated clubs. Sugarland is AAA for the Astros, and Corpus, AA, that kind of deal. We are partners with Major League Baseball, and basically what it's done is made it easier for us to move players from our clubs to Major League organizations. Much easier transition than before. But we're not really affiliated, but there is that partnership does work together, and they know that the American Association provides either opportunity for guys that they're watching to maybe see how they're holding up health wise, or guys who they've got an eye on that maybe didn't work out in one organization, but we might be good for theirs. Let's see how they look in this competition, because the American Association is it's solid competition. I mean, it's not big league, obviously, but there are nights that it's every bit as AAA, and every bit is you've got former big leaguers littered across the place, and talented AA prospects left and right, and really young finds. There's a kid, Ryan Fitzgerald, who's it looks like he may make the Red Sox club this year, was in our league a couple of years ago, was just kind of a find. And so you've got all those stories. It's a great place to chase your major league dreams, or to rechase them, depending on the situation.
And that's an interesting point, because a lot of times, and I knew this just from being with the Red Barons, you don't have, many people never knew or don't know that minor league teams are basically their own small business, and the players are, if you're affiliated with the team, are controlled by that particular team. But really, you've got your stadium and your personnel and your employees and everything else that goes along with that, concessions and souvenirs, everything else. That's all on you. And it really, it's not easy. Like you mentioned about having to wear a bunch of hats, you do in minor league baseball for sure. Do you think, does it give a team greater control? I mean, when you're an independent team, you could sign anybody you want, basically, right? So
it's about that. That's what makes the American Association so much fun. Is that Kansas City is about there's two things in the philosophy. Joe Capietra, who's our field manager of the year last year, and has been phenomenal with us in Kansas City. He's got two goals. His first goal is to get guys back to affiliated baseball. That's why the Monarchs lead the independent leagues in getting guys signed back to affiliate baseball. The other thing is to win. And he
Mm-hmm.
puts together, Joe puts together the club. We don't have to worry about the big club in Kansas City, the Royals
Mm-hmm.
telling us, play
Mm-hmm.
this kid, play this kid. We're there to win. And that's the ultimate, those are the two goals, those parallel paths on the field. And so the culture is a lot different than, say, a double A or triple A club where you might be told the scouting director and the
Mm-hmm.
GM, they say, we're going to play this lineup because we want to see this kid, because we want to see if this kid can be this guy in the big leagues, and it may affect your on-field wins and losses, but it's also about player development. We're still want to develop players, but we've already got guys that are more developed than others, as opposed to where double A may still be about development. And so we're about winning and also getting guys back to affiliated ball, where affiliated ball is about development, except maybe in some triple A situations where they're also a holding tank for guys, the next man up when somebody goes down the big
Mm-hmm.
leagues.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and it's kind of an interesting. You're kind of two different worlds there, because I knew many fans, many people who they love the fact that the next maybe great prospect is coming through. You get to see him for a little while,
Sure.
but at the same token, maybe you don't. Maybe they jump from double A right to the majors. Maybe
Yeah.
they, there's all kinds of
That
situations.
was that happened to me. I believe it was '94 when I was in Jacksonville. Alex Rodriguez skipped a level. I forget which one I guess he skipped AAA. Alex Rodriguez went from A ball to double A. Then instead of going AAA, he went straight from double A to the big leagues. So he skipped AAA. So those folks at Tacoma who thought they were going to see the number one prospect never saw him. They only saw
Hmm.
him in the big leagues, of course, around the corner in Seattle. But that happens a lot. You think that, and another thing, you can't control. In that case, I remember Alex Rodriguez's summer. He was only with the club, I believe, in that summer of '94 for about 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks, and he was gone. So, and I think they only had like 3 homestands or three home series that he actually played there in Jacksonville. So I mean, it wasn't like he was there all summer anyway.
Yeah. What I think is very cool about the situation with the Monarchs, rebranding as the KC Monarchs, is it was like a perfect situation. Here's a minor league team in Kansas City with a major league team there as well. Now they become independent. They have the opportunity to take on all of that history, and it's just a beautiful thing. I think it's fantastic that they did that.
It is unreal when that happened, and when I realized, I knew before we made the announcement of that January of '20. I knew a few months before the holidays, and it was hard to keep my excitement
I bet.
tempered, because I knew that I had suddenly a built-in history that no other broadcaster in the world of sport has. I mean, all of a sudden you're handed this story of these brave men and the legacy and the things they went through, and
Hmm.
just the ability, especially in a COVID world we were in at the time, to pivot and make their game grow despite all the consequences that were thrown upon them. They were thrown in
Hmm.
all these different curveballs, and they still made the game grow. The Monarchs would travel in the 1930s to places and to sold out crowds throughout the country as they barnstormed. So, and I didn't realize, and I think you mentioned this earlier, I didn't realize the history and the magnitude of all that until I realized, wait, these guys weren't just a team that played 2 years. These were like the most successful team of that brand of baseball, and
Hmm.
opened up a whole new world for me as a broadcaster. And dang
Hmm.
it, I feel like I have not. I feel like I'm a student of the game, a history student of the game, but I didn't know a dang thing about the Negro Leagues, and that's a sad story. And that's
Hmm.
why I've tried to continue to tell that story. I've committed myself as a broadcaster to tell that story, and tell the story
Cool.
of what they went through, the injustice and all that. And I at first it was kind of funny because I thought, why is a white, kind of conservative guy quest with a story? But the more I thought about it, after going to the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, I realized that Dr. King was talking to me about sharing the injustice, because
Hmm.
I was the guy who was talking about the moderate from their letters to Birmingham jail, and I realized that my place as
Hmm.
is to tell
Hmm.
that story of what the injustice was. And so I, at every turn, I take that opportunity with the passion to tell the story of the Monarchs and what they overcame, and
Hmm.
just the history of it and the things that I've learned
Oh
at
my
every
goodness.
turn. I mean, the
You've got
stories you learn.
Look at what you've got. You've got no better teacher in the world than Bob Kendrick
Absolutely.
and the and the museum in Kansas City, right there. I mean, it's fantastic. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, the stories. I mean, I don't know if we follow each other on Twitter. I mean, every single day I try to point out something that somebody might not have heard about, because it's, everybody knows the Satchel Pages, Josh
Sure.
Gibson, Cool Papa Bell is my favorite player. Many of the others maybe, but there were thousands of these guys playing in the shadows for all those years behind that color barrier, behind all the Jim Crow and the racism of the time. And like you said, the story of persistence is really what it's all about. But it's not just the stars. There were a lot of other guys who were involved in this that you wish it's not. And it's not all about numbers. These guys were human beings. They had stories, they had reasons why they were doing what they were doing. So it's important. It's important to keep those stories alive and being told, for sure.
Yeah, I love I love reading the old newspaper stories from the time, and just the
Hmm.
stories and the names. And again, you're right. There was a couple of I do two segments on a broadcast, Monarchs 101, and also do a
Oh.
flashback moment. I do both those on our radio broadcast, and there's been a couple that I've found of guys that only played a couple of years or maybe a year and a half, but they had a huge stretch of 4 or 5 games. Or
Hmm.
and there was one story I found. I'll share this one. There's a story from 1936, which the Monarchs traveled in those days with J.L. Wilkinson's lights. They had their own portable light system, right? So
Hmm.
this is night baseball before night baseball. Well, these two guys were driving the county road to Missouri from one town to the next, and they're coming back from their hometown or doing business at a market in the next town, and they're driving at dusk, and they see this glow in the distance, and they think their hometown's on fire. They think this little small town of Missouri is burning down because it looks like as they got closer, they realized the Monarchs were in town playing baseball, and they didn't have lights in that town. That whole town was lit up with the lights, and those are things that you take yourself back to the 1930s.
Oh, it's a different world.
Different world back then, but
Yeah.
the things you learn, it's just such an amazing experience.
It really is, and there are, like I said, you don't have any better storyteller in the world than Bob, and having the museum there. So that's a great great resource to have.
Absolutely.
The players on the team, do they also come to know about that history too,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I had Darnell Sweeney on a couple weeks ago on my show, Rain Reborn, and he just can't he just cannot stop talking about that experience. All the players and a lot of the guys, it's their first time to Kansas City, and
Yeah.
so their first, and it's one of those things you kind of need to see. There's a checklist of every town, and they all go through a private tour with Bob, and they all are wanting to go back. I mean, I remember that group of players we took last year. They were all, God, can we go back? When do we go back? And they get it. Joe
Awesome.
Capietro, our manager, gets it. He understands the importance. I know our coaches do. Frank White, former Royal. I
Hmm.
mean, they all understand the magnitude of that name and what it means,
Hmm.
not just to Kansas City, but to baseball in general. And just
Hmm.
it's a nationwide, international thing, and it's not lost on these guys. And I think it's very important. And this is no knock on team whatever another town with
Hmm.
a cute mascot, but being a Monarch means something. It
Hmm.
means something. I
Hmm.
mean, it's like you would. I mean, I would have think putting a pinstripes on means something for a Yankee.
Hmm.
I'm not to tell you that's the same thing, but it's very close,
Hmm.
and it matters to a lot of people. And to Bob Kendrick, I can tell you those. And he,
Absolutely.
he even said that those Monarch stripes mean something.
Absolutely. No, I think every day when people go to that game, it's a teaching moment, right? For
Absolutely.
everybody, and it's very very cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do in my broadcast, because I really feel like that's, again, like I mentioned earlier, that I should be telling that message.
Hmm.
Initially, I felt uncomfortable about it because I didn't know if that was my place.
I
But I
hear you.
realized,
I hear you.
but I realized it is my place
Hmm.
as a citizen of the world, as a child of our maker. I feel like it's my place, and telling the world and educating our fans. And it's interesting how the Australia thing parallels it, because in Australia, when I'm broadcasting there, I'm doing a lot more educating the fans in general who live, the Australian fans, about the American way of baseball, because a lot of them have questions. They don't understand that how the minor league system works or how the draft
Ah.
works or whatever. So I catch myself sort of teaching in the same vein in my pregame show and some of the broadcast. I'm not teaching our fans about baseball. I'm teaching about the Monarchs because a lot of it I'm learning too. And if I find something great, a
Hmm.
nugget out there that I think is cool, like
Share it. Yeah.
Jackie Robinson really didn't enjoy his spring training his first year at his only year at the Monarchs, and I shared that tidbit from an article I'd found. There's always these little things. If I see something, I want to make sure I share it with my listener and our fans because I think it's important that we're all learning, and I love that. I'm always learning new things, and it's just it's funny because the broadcast is, while it's very important to me, the play by play, I take as much pride in the extra nuggets than I do anything
Hmm.
else. I'm not ERAs are great and home run records are great, but boy, a story about Bullet Rogan or Jose Mendez and his clarinet playing, things like that. Those are stories that I just love to tell.
Absolutely. No, hats off to you, man. I think I know exactly the way you feel because that's the way I've been for a long time myself. I think it's important to keep telling the stories because to not you know you're missing so much of baseball history that for a long time was suppressed and
Sure.
was kept in the shadows, and you can't let it go back there,
Yeah,
so
I love your daily nuggets too. And it's funny,
cool, thank you.
I was on I was on a show, a podcast with Billy Martin Jr. a couple of weeks ago, and
Oh wow.
Billy Martin Jr. was talking about how his father Billy Sr. was talking about how, and I forget the player who it was. Gosh, I wish I could remember who it was that the Yankees had, but he wasn't allowed in a couple of the cities, and I forget the player's name now. It's drawn a blank, but he and Mickey Mantle would sit on the bus of the Yankees team bus and not go into the restaurant with the rest of the team because this one player couldn't go in because he was black, and they would sit in the bus and just hang out with him and just chat and talk whatever as if they were all good friends, and they would not go in because they couldn't go, is that they couldn't go in. I thought that was a real, those are real things that you learn left and right that we forget that,
Hmm.
the players at the time saw it, they knew it, and they forget, and we all
Hmm.
forget that.
Hmm. And there is a place for stats, like you mentioned. I
Yeah,
mean, they're part of the game. They are the game. I mean,
sure,
they tell a story as well. As far as
absolutely.
being able to grade players, but these types of stories, the backgrounds on players, where they came from, what was going on, are important to tell. And the Negro Leagues, like I said, for such a long time, none of these were being told.
Sure.
And there were many people who kept those stories alive for decades. And if they weren't, who knows what would have happened? Come this past 2 years ago or so, if Major League Baseball finally getting around to recognizing the Negro Leagues. So
And that's why the work that Bob's done,
mhm,
and
it's
Buck
important.
O'Neill did. I
Mhm.
mean, Buck O'Neill kept it alive. And Buck O'Neill was the guy, the Ken Burns special that you're like, wait, he was on Letterman. He really was a champion to keep the cause alive, and we're
Mhm.
recognizing him this summer going to the Hall of Fame. But which way late, but he's going to get there. But those guys that did that to keep that memory alive, because it is it's I mean, unfortunately swept under the rug, and
Mhm.
I really believe going to the Negro. I say this on the broadcast, going to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City is a life changing. If you're a sports fan or if you're just a fan of life, it'll
Mhm.
change your perspective dramatically. And I recommend that and the Human Rights Museum there in Memphis. Those two museums, or Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. Sorry, those two museums. You can't come out of those places going, "Oh, that was okay." You're going out going, "Wow,"
Mhm.
and wow. And Buck O'Neill is such a part of the wow.
Mhm. Right.
Just that guy, man. It's awesome. And then we sing at seventh inning stretch now at Kansas City. We play the Buck O'Neill "Take Me Out the Ball Game" that he sang on the Ken Burns
Mhm.
documentary, and we were able to receive permission from Ken Burns to do that,
Nice.
which I think is great that Ken Burns signed off and said, "Absolutely, you guys do that,"
Mhm.
letting us use that footage. So every seventh inning stretch, we
Cool.
have Buck O'Neill on the school board, video board, singing "Take Me Out the Ball Game."
That's awesome. That's awesome. What kind? So baseball in Australia, is it? Are there? I mean, baseball is baseball, but I mean, it's got to have. Does it have a different flavor than baseball in the U.S.?
You can close your eyes, and without the difference would be the anthem. You hear the anthem, it's different.
Yeah.
Advance Australia Fair is the anthem, and that's where you
Mhm.
know it's different. But there are subtle differences. There are a few concession items here and there. It's not like going to Japan or Korea where it's really different. It's
Mhm.
very much like the American game. They play it very much like the American game. The crowds are very much like a minor league U.S. game. a lot of music, a lot of the in between innings things. But it's still a fringe sport in Australia. It's probably the 10th or 11th most popular sport in Australia.
Really?
Yeah, it's still ways to
Wow.
go. Yeah, because you got Australian rules football and rugby and
Mhm.
cricket, and then you throw in netball, and then you've got also soccer. You've also got swimming, surfing, track and field, and now you're getting to. I'm sorry, I left out basketball. They love
Basketball,
they
yeah.
love basketball. The Australian Basketball League's very good. They've also got field hockey. So you're looking at 10 by the time you get to a baseball. But baseball's got a place, and it's definitely one of those situations where the pandemic really hurt the growth of the game because
Hmm.
it's one of those things that it needs to build upon every year. Where here you don't play little league baseball for a year, well, you're probably going to be okay. But over there, they don't play for a year. Well, it really is hurt because they're still trying to they're playing catch up. So it really hurt. The last 2 years have been really hard on baseball, but I think
Hmm.
it's heading the right direction. But you close your eyes though, and
Hmm.
you'd hear the same music, you'd hear the same things, you hear the Sweet Carolines
Hmm.
and that kind of deal.
Really?
Yeah,
No
but
kidding.
and you might get a hot dog or what they call or a sausage sizzle. You'll get fries as they call them, chips over there.
Hmm.
But in general, the beer's still cold. The flag still flaps in the breeze.
Hmm.
It's
Cool.
just it's very, but it's just strange because you're playing, and that's the thing. You're playing in January. I'm thinking, well, it's 90 degrees here in Perth. It's January, 90 degrees, and it's back in the States it's 30. It's a little odd. You're kind of thinking, wait, it feels like July, but it's January. But really, at reality, it is their July.
Yep,
So
they're upside down. That's right. So you mentioned earlier about the importance of the Monarchs name and minor leagues. Um, yes, they are famous for the uh, difference of team names, names that are more associated with that community, that are telling that story with the logo or the team name about that particular city. But you've got one coming up because the Monarchs start, you mentioned to me, in a couple of weeks in May. But you've got a game coming up against a team that's really unique in the Savannah Bananas. What do you think of that one?
banana ball. It's definitely different. If you're one of those people that thinks baseball's boring and needs a revamp or a shot in the arm, well,
Hmm.
that game's for you.
Yep.
A Savannah Banana game's for you because they do in kind of a throwback to J.L. Wilkinson's Monarchs back in the early 19 or mid 1920s. They used to take a band and a wrestling act and all this stuff with their baseball team
Hmm.
around. They sort of do the same thing. They bring their own band, cheerleaders,
Hmm.
stilts, and they dancing umpires, and they do some crazy rules, and they spice it up. There's no walks, so on ball four you got to run to first base and things like that. It's fun. It's different. I'm not gonna. The baseball purists may kind of go, I don't know, but you'll be entertained. I guarantee you that. And so
Hmm.
May 6th and 7th, they're at Legends Field in Kansas City. It's part of their world tour playing there, and so it should be fun. But Ball, it's how we're going to start our season,
Cool.
and those folks do a great job. And
They sure do.
great job.
Yeah, they sure do. I just didn't they just have I just saw Bill Lee at
It
whatever it
was
is.
down in was it Florida or was it Alabama? Somewhere down south.
Hmm.
That he came out of the stands, beer in hand, hold my beer, the ultimate hold my beer, right? And
Right?
struck out a guy,
Yeah.
with this wicked looking breaking ball. I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like that kid hadn't seen something like that. Talk about 12-6 hook, but
Really reminds me of like you mentioned about the barnstorming of the, when they had the Indianapolis Clowns, when they were
yes,
more of a vaudeville kind of act. But
sure,
they
sure,
they they these are still good athletes. These are good
absolutely,
players. This is not
absolutely.
just a bunch of people going through the
Well,
motions.
and you see what they do. I mean, there's one skit they do, and you can YouTube all this stuff too. It's all over there. But there's one
Hmm.
skit they do where the guy will between in the inning, they pass the microphone around and they karaoke. The second baseman will sing a song, and the
Oh my
shortstop will
God.
sing a song, and they don't miss a beat, and they're playing the game as they're singing. I'm like, I'm lucky just to sing, much less play a game. these guys can do both. So it is fun. It's interesting because really the roots of the Negro League, and I go back to G.L. Wilkinson with Kansas City. He was the founder of the Monarchs, the old All Nations team in the late 1900s and into the 20s. When he took the Monarchs on the road, they took the game to the people. They would create, and you mentioned the Clowns had a volleyball act, and they would throw play phantom ball around the
Mm-hmm.
infield. But the Monarchs actually would take. They had a band, and like I said, Jose Mendez played in the band, one of the stars of the time. They actually brought a wrestling act on to kind of open up. So they would go play these county festivals that were these small towns were looking for entertainment of any kind. This is way before the megaplex and big cinemas or before the drive-ins. These
Mm-hmm.
people wanted entertainment. They only read about it maybe in the in the newspaper, or the once in a while the talkies that they get once in a while. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
get entertainment, and this is what
Mm-hmm.
they got. And seeing these stars, and so they took the whole baseball thing and turned it into a big festival. That's
Mm-hmm.
what the Bananas do. Bananas take a baseball game and turn it into an entertainment festival. And it's a and if they come to your neighborhood, or you're in that part of the country, you're in Savannah through the summer, go check out Banana Game.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that what you're just talking about, that's a story about the Negro Leagues that kind of gets overlooked.
Sure,
How the barnstorming, it was for a reason. I mean, they could make money doing it.
absolutely,
It's all about making money, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
absolutely,
And so,
absolutely,
so the fact that they were providing entertainment, but they were spreading that baseball brand all over the continent,
absolutely.
all over the world, and
All of North
that
America and
was.
north of the world. Absolutely. There's a story of uh, the House of David, which is
Hmm.
a group out of Benton Harbor, Michigan. They were a bunch of
Hmm.
religious sect, a religious group, and they all had these long beards. Which back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, long beards were not a big thing. We're talking long Civil War
Hmm.
type beards,
Hmm.
and these guys were big rivals of the Monarchs, and they would take their act together. And they would go through the Rockies and through Colorado and Wyoming and up through Montana and out to Seattle and up to Vancouver and across Canada and back down. They would take a whole, 6-8 weeks in a Pullman car and travel together and play these rivalry games. And it was good baseball and entertaining. And again, you're taking the game to the people
Hmm.
that were starved for entertainment and starved for something.
Hmm.
Not everybody lived in Chicago and New York at the time.
Right.
Some people lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that was all they saw was when the local team played the Monarchs. And that
Hmm.
happened over and over again. And you can see case in point, they'd actually take league games like the St. Louis Stars would play the Monarchs
Hmm.
in a game in a league game
Somewhere
in
in the middle of
in
Iowa, yeah, or whatever,
Sioux
yeah,
City, Iowa, at
yeah.
the Stockyard Stadium in Sioux City, Iowa.
Hmm.
Absolutely, happened
Yeah,
all the time. Yeah,
yeah. And and it's such a, I don't want to say touchy subject, but it's a delicate subject because they were doing it because obviously, if they were provided the opportunity to be able to play in Major League Baseball or the organized minor leagues, they would have been. And there's a
absolutely,
huge trunk of players who would have. I mean,
absolutely.
nobody's saying all of them, but
No,
that means a whole chunk of Major League Baseball and minor league baseball would have been out and
absolutely,
replaced by Latin
absolutely.
players and
No,
African American players. But, so now, though, it's why so many of these guys ended up going south of the border and staying there
absolutely,
and playing.
absolutely.
Because if you're going to come back here and deal with all the, the guff you have to deal with here, why, of course you're going to go do that because you're making money and you're not having to put up with maybe quite all of the nonsense that you would run into playing wherever else you're playing.
Yeah.
And
In
it's.
in general, playing south the border, playing Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Mexico were huge opportunities for these guys. Not only from a financial standpoint, but also
Mhm.
from a social standpoint. They were able to stay in nicer hotels, eat at any restaurant they wanted to. Were in many cases just revered as players. I
Mhm.
mean, they were big celebrities down there. They were treated very much like very equal. In general, that's the way it was for the most part. There were a few instances that was here hit or miss, but by and large, the life of a Negro League player in Latin America was phenomenally better, markedly better than it was playing in the Negro Leagues in the States, which is
Mhm.
just still blows my mind. And I tell you what blows my mind too is that, and I think there's a parallel here, and this is probably a whole subject that Bob would be great about telling, Bob Kendrick, but the war years of the 1940s when those gentlemen served in segregated units, but served their country
Mm-hmm.
just like their white counterparts that played baseball did. But I think that sort of, and I think World War II sort of push that, hey, we can fight and die together and serve this country, then why are we not playing ball together? And I think that really was that kind of was the World War II. And I'm not saying because it was a whole different, it was a war about other things, but I think socially it helped push the Branch Rickies of the world to say, you know what, well, I mean, we got these guys dying overseas, yes, in segregated units, but why? I mean, Jackie Robinson's court-martial trial was about him wanting to sit in the back of the bus. I mean, these are things that you want us to fight for your country, that you want us to sit in the back of the bus. And I think that kind of pushed that toward the equal treatment and the good of the wall coming down, the color barrier coming down means the Negro Leagues went away, but that was the pleasant problem you had. You wanted,
Right.
that's what happened.
Yeah, I've had many discussions about that. Authors on talking about, it's had to be a tough situation knowing that you owned a team,
Yeah.
and that once these guys were going to be gone, then the fans are going to be wanting to know how they are doing in Major League Baseball, and your brand is going to slowly wither. And it's what happened. I mean, it continued on for many times. I've told this story many times. I actually saw the Clowns, and the Negro Leagues played through the 50s into the 60s in some places. But I actually saw the Clowns in like 1974, 5, somewhere around in there. I was 10 years old at the time. They came through Northeast PA. And it was what we're talking about, the shadow ball, but it was still good baseball, and it was very entertaining. And I don't remember as much of it as I wish I could, but I was a kid, and I was more concerned about running around with my friends, in the stands than really paying attention. And if I wish I could go back to my 10-year-old self and watch that game again, But it's something that. These guys did, like we're talking about, they did what they had to do, and they persevered. And it's just a great story that I will tell it every day. I have been trying to for years and years and years. Many people have as well. I think it's great. And what you're doing with the Monarchs, with the Monarchs, would you call it Monarchs 101?
I do a segment called Monarchs 101.
Cool.
And then I do it's a flashback moment. We have a sponsor. I think it's Coors Light. Actually, it was our Coors Light flashback moment, and usually it's on this date, but not always. A couple of I try to make those. If we're in Chicago, I try to find something either on this date or when they play the Chicago American Giants, who Rube Foster founded, one of the co-founders of the Negro League in 1920 there in Kansas City. Try to focus something of that rivalry. We're in Milwaukee. I'll try to find something. Then the 101 is a longer segment. More things you might learn at the museum. Maybe it's a story of Bullet Joe Rogan, or when I did the segment last show, I did it on Jackie Robinson playing in the California Winter League for a team called the Kansas City Royals for Chet Brewer, who was the legendary Monarch and played a number of years in the Negro Leagues, but had a team of Negro players who played in California in a integrated league. Now the teams were segregated, but the league wasn't. And it was a winter league that was a premier winter league at the time. And he played for a team called the Kansas City Royals. So little tidbit a lot of folks didn't know about, that Jackie, when he became a Monarch, was actually a Royal, but it wasn't the Kansas City Royals that we know today. It was the Kansas City Royals of the California Winter League. So I try to tell those longer stories in that 5-minute window, and then like the 2.5-minute stories in the shorter window. And then we and if we're in, we're in Milwaukee, for example, is a great story about the Milwaukee Bears, who played only one season in 1923, and it's just a phenomenal story about it, what you can find out there. I believe it was University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, or Marquette, one of the two, did a phenomenal historical piece, and try to piece those stories together, because there's not a lot out there in some of these stories. So you try to piece it together, and you find yourself almost like a detective trying to find pieces to tell a story.
Absolutely. No. I think it's important to keep telling them, for sure.
Yeah,
so you mentioned about some of the things that minor league baseball. What are some of the promotions that the Monarchs have coming up for this year?
Yeah, well, waved our staff with Mark Brandmeier, our owner, who's a local Kansas City guy. Congratulations to him and the rest of his Jayhawk friends who are all our
Oh
my
yeah.
rest of my Jayhawk staff members. I think almost all the employees there, except for me and a couple others that are not Jayhawks. For congratulations, those folks. But Mark Brandmeier's done a phenomenal job putting together just a outstanding staff. One of the things he did was he brought back Morgan Kalenda, who was our promotions and on-field coordinator, and she holder from the T-Bones days, and she, along with Brandmeier, McKee, and the whole staff there, have done a great job putting together an interesting approach to promotions. And what they're trying to do, and I like this, is something I love that we do in Australia as well, turning into big weekends. Your weekends are your big nights, right? Your Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. So really theme weekends. And for example, like the Soul Weekend is going to feature, 3 different types of music that weekend, and going to be some barbecue one night, and then we're going to do always,
Cool.
opening night, we're going to do our ring ceremony and fireworks, but every Saturday is our firework night. Every Friday, we're going to have our skydivers, but we've got a tailgate weekend where every night of the weekend, we're going to be doing, a KU salute, KSU salute, Missouri salute,
Cool.
all those things, but turning it more into a theme-wide weekend, but also throw those things into your T-shirts, your ball caps amongst that. And opening our gates up a little bit early on Saturday, having a band in our plaza there, folks playing a little music and creating a bit of a vibe. We want it to be an event. And we've added some a brand new playground area for our disabled kids, and in right field. We've also got a brand new party area that's coming into shape right now in center field for our groups, and just really making the place to be. They've done a great job of that. And oh, by the way, we're going to play winning baseball, so we throw that in there too.
Right, that always helps too. But that is the one thing about the minor leagues. Promotions aside, they're fantastic. However, uh, it is some pretty affordable fun for people to be able to take their family and go and not break the bank, and you can
Right?
do it more often. And that's, I think, that's what's going to keep baseball afloat.
I agree.
It's not these, you know, they have the affiliations now with, I guess you want to call them gambling and other
Right.
things now. No, you've got to get young fans into the game. There's so many things that are
Yeah.
changing now.
I'll give you an example. When I was a kid growing up in the 70s in DFW, going to a Ranger game was a luxury. I mean, we didn't, it was
Right?
far out for my house in Northeast Dallas, was far out there, old Arlington Stadium. We would go maybe, I mean, on a good year, if we joined the little junior Ranger club, we might get 4 games a year, might. But it
Hmm.
was a luxury. And even to this day, going to a big league game is a luxury for a lot of folks.
And it's still the most affordable sport
Yes, it
of
is.
all of them. Yes.
Yes, but we didn't have the opportunity to go to now here in Dallas Fort Worth, we've got Frisco, which is 20 minutes from my house, at minor league, much more affordable. But when I was a kid, we didn't have those opportunities. We didn't. If you were growing up in Kansas City, you didn't have the opportunity to go to a Monarchs game. And a lot of places are like that. Every city now, look at Chicago or look at Houston with Sugarland. You've got kids that
Hmm.
can go now, and you can. So where you used to maybe go to the Astros 4 times a year, you can go to the Skeeters twice a month, and it's going to help. So your kid's going to see 8, 10 ball games as opposed to 4. They're going to be either going to really like it or not like it at all. And I think you're right. We forget. Throwing. It's great they have sponsorship money for gamblers and all that, but they
Hmm.
got to get those kids in there because those kids are wanting to see
Absolutely.
it. They want to
Yeah.
see it, and you want to take. And nothing better than sitting there. I remember sitting there with my big Coke that felt probably wasn't that big, but it felt like huge. Or Dr. Pepper actually, as a
Yeah.
Texan, and my big popcorn. It seemed like the biggest bucket in the world, and be able to sit there and watch a game in person
Hmm.
is so. You
Oh my
get it or you
goodness.
don't. And if an opportunity to go to minor league games at a cheaper price point, and I was in a family of 4, so a family of 4 could go to a Monarchs game a lot more affordable than going to a Royals game. But you're right, it's still much more affordable. But
Hmm.
you're looking at it cost you more to park probably to get everybody in. That's how crazy it is.
That's what was so much fun when Scranton finally got a minor league team, is because we were a little bit spoiled because the Philadelphia was maybe about an hour and a half away. New York
Sure.
City was about 2.5 hours away. We were close to a lot of places, Baltimore even, Pittsburgh. Boston. I mean, you could easily
Sure,
drive in a couple hours to most of these places. However, they were still big league, and you still had to organize it and have the money to be able to go. So when that team came to Northeast PA in 1989, that was a big deal because it
sure,
it it really. I think people became baseball fans again. At least a lot
sure,
of people that I knew that kind of were falling away from it. It brought
absolutely.
it back. So it's important. I think it's great. Yeah, you mentioned about the Skeeters now are the Space Cowboys,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Sorry, they're
But
called the
yeah,
Skeeters. They're the Space
I
Cowboys.
can't get used to that either. I kind of like
Yeah,
Skeeters myself. But I always look at the American Association teams, and man, Cleburne, they got a long way to go to most of these places, don't they?
yeah. They reshuffled the divisions this year to Eastern and West. The West Division is basically an I-29. It's Winnipeg. Then you've got Fargo. You got Sioux Falls, Sioux City. You've
Hmm.
got Lincoln, Kansas City, all in that one stretch there. And then the other division is going to be all the teams in Chicago, the Chicago Dogs, Gary
Hmm.
South Shore. Then you got the Milwaukee. Oh, I'm sorry, Kane County, which is
King
out in
County, yeah.
the western suburbs. And you got the Milwaukee teams, Lake County, and then Milwaukee. And oh, by the way,
Oh, by the way,
Cleburne
Cleburne.
down here, 20 minutes from downtown Fort Worth is
Hmm.
going to be in that division. I don't know really what went into that. I know it was voted on by the league. Um, from a personal standpoint, only coming to Texas once sucks for me because my wife is down here and that's where I want to see her as much as I can for the season. And that's selfish for me, sipping in my own bed. But yeah, for Cleveland and for my friend Brad Allred, who's their play-by-play guy, luckily he has a second job, I believe, working for the airline, so he can actually probably save him some money
That was my
flying to Chicagoland. But
that was my
yeah,
next question. How do you
yeah,
guys? How do they get around? Is it bus? They fly? How are
yeah.
they getting
We
around?
we there are almost always every team has a bus contract of some sort, and so it's by bus. Now you can individually. I will mix in. I was doing my schedule last night. I'll probably fly a third to a half the games, depending on where we're going, and what my schedule's like. Oftentimes I'll fly back from Winnipeg as opposed to driving back, but we have to go there twice in August. But we have a great bus situation, great driver. Casey Strong, who's a phenomenal fan probably the biggest fan of the ball club, is our bus driver. He's with us every day, and he's a phenomenal guy. But it's all bus. But if you decide to, if a guy wants to fly, and a lot of times they'll fly the pitcher in, we'll fly a guy ahead. We'll do
Hmm.
that sometimes, but by and large, it's all
Ah,
pitching. I don't know what Cleveland's going to do. I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland flew to Chicago and rented a bus up there, but I don't know what their plans are, honestly. But everybody else is busting it. You got to feel for. I mean, look at Gary, South Shore, Chicago, and Kane County. They got two commuter trips each. Those are all commuter trips for each one of them. They don't have to stay overnight in a hotel.
no, they can just go
Uh,
home after the game,
yeah,
right?
yeah. We have no commuter trips, and Cleveland has no commuter trips, and so yeah, Milwaukee and Lake Country
That's
Lake
true,
County.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at the division that KC is in, you were probably, yeah, you got the longest trip of
The,
anybody
o- the,
there
o-
as
the
well.
only the only commute in our division, Sioux City and Sioux Falls. They're like an hour apart. That's it. But everybody else is we have to everything for us, and even our division, Milwaukee. I'm sorry, Winnipeg's, and of course crossing the border is also a little different than it has been in the past, and it's always been a little different anyway because you got to have your numbers got to match on a bus and all that kind of stuff. And Canadian government's also a little difficult to get in sometimes as well. That can be a challenge. So they getting in, so you have to add an extra 45 minutes to an hour on the trip anyway, just in case. Never know
Hmm.
if the border line's long or if it's short. Depends what time day you cross, but it's a challenge for us.
I'm
That's
sure.
why I try to mix as many flights as I can in if I can
Right?
if I can.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to another Monarchs season this year. I'll be following along and listening. Now, some of the teams I know, independent, many teams now are doing streaming, things like that. Does KC do that?
Yes, we're in a league. We have a league-wide stream. The league has a aabaseball.tv, I believe what's the actual site, and there's a platform in there, and every team streams their home games,
Cool.
and so you can go in there. My understanding is this year you'll be able to see, like for example, if we're in Fargo, you can watch the video, but also pick your audio, whether it be the Fargo audio or the Kansas City audio, which in the years past you couldn't do that. We also stream audio home and away. All of our games are broadcast home and away on a video. On an audio platform. And we also do some things. We do a booth cam, and we do some other things like that. But but the league does have a one site for all the games, so you can sit there one night and binge watch all the American Association action and get it all right there.
Cool. No, I will definitely check that out. That'd be a lot of fun. It's interesting. I mentioned about Andy Brown, the artist, right? He was just down in the Dominican for 4 months, painting literally live during games. He's done it in England. He's been to Italy. He's been all over the place. And we were just I asked him, where are you going next? And he wasn't quite sure. Maybe we can get him to go to Australia and do some Australian. He actually started in Korea doing this. He's painted like I don't know how many hundreds of ballparks all over the world, and he's just a very interesting dude.
Talk about different atmosphere.
See if I can get him to Australia.
Get him to Australia, but get him to Australia. We'd love to have him. If he's been in Korea and started in Korea, he knows the excitement of Korean baseball. Talk about an event.
Yes.
Korea and Japan are events. Man,
it's how he became a baseball fan. He's from England originally, and goes to Korea, and now that's how he became a baseball fan, was because of Korean baseball. So yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
very cool.
I've seen his work. I do know I've seen his work now that it's right. He is from England. I'd forgotten about that. That's right.
Very, very cool.
He and Baseball Brett, my buddy Baseball Brett, who's
that's right.
Well.
That's right. All right, Dan, I really appreciate your time. This was a lot of fun. I would love to get you back on here down the road and talk a little more about Australian baseball. I got a million questions more I wanted to ask you, but we got to keep it within reason. I could probably talk to you until the sun goes down and comes up again about baseball. I can tell you that.
I admit that I get a little long-winded, so I do apologize for that. But
no way, man.
It's better to edit it down than anything else. But I'm always here to help out, and always hop on and talk Australia, talk the Monarchs, and talk to the association. I'm right here anytime you need me.
And you're only a couple hours away. I'm going to have to get up to a Cleburne game, and maybe I'll let you know when we're coming. It's not that far from here from us.
Stop in the booth, and we'll have to chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Don't go away. I'm going to sign us off. Appreciate your time, and you take care, man. All right, bye-bye.